All right, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, Elohim, of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to say peace to you in the name of his son, Yahushua Mashiach, who we know as Jesus the Christ. It's always a blessing. I count it a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to bring a message contained in this word and never do count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, just let me say this. If this message gets cut off, because I've been having some issues with streaming, just know that I'll get it on Lord willing sometime today. With that being said, I want to deal with something, just some more Bible basics, and this one is the dowry. The dowry, and the reason I'm dealing with this is, quite frankly, because of a conversation I had with a good brother. When he sees this, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about, or why I'm doing it. But it's also, something that I've seen that sisters have had issue with, and because they look at it as if it's disrespectful, and as if you're purchasing me. I'm not an object. I am this and I'm that. And I don't really think they understand what the dowry. I know they don't understand what the dowry is. And I want to read something here, because this is let me find this book. This is something that is a problem in the what we call it in truth, because what happens is people don't really they don't understand that they can't interpret the Bible according to their Western belief system. Okay, and that's a problem. They need to understand that you need to, in addition to the language, which has to be interpreted in the Bible, right? Because the Bible's in Hebrew, at least the Old Testament, a little bit of Aramaic, but mainly Hebrew. Not only do you have to interpret the words, you have to translate the culture as well. Okay, so certain things if you think about the culture many of us are in right now, we're in a Western culture. This is a Western culture that is infused with feminism, okay, and it is matriarchal. Okay, it has been that way for some time, and it has been actually in our community has been that way for a longer time than the rest of the larger society, because our women, quite frankly, have been put over us by the powers that be. And we accepted it, and you see what our communities look like. The Bible, the culture was ancient Near Eastern culture. Okay, that is that is patriarchal culture. That means men are in charge. And in those particular societies in which men are in charge, there are systems that are set up that basically protect women. Okay, so the dowry is no different, actually. But for example, people look at polygyny, for example, through Western eyes today. How could you? Well, women will say, well, how about if I get another husband? Well, that would make you an adulteress. So let's you can't do that. Polyandry is sin. So, but polygyny ensured that all women would have needed a husband would be covered with a husband. It actually is for the benefit of women. That's just an example. And the Lord, if you look at the Torah and the laws that are set up, you understand that women were to be covered from their birth all the way to their death. So that's just what it is. And the same thing with the dowry. So I've literally had, there's a number of people at one time. There was a smaller group of people that were want to be a part of the congregation. And we sat down and we talked. And one of the points of contention was this dowry. And they didn't first of all, I hadn't even really discussed the dowry or anything like that. We weren't talking about somebody wasn't getting married and it came up. It was just they had a particular problem with the dowry. And that's why I knew it wasn't going to work, because what you have a problem with is with the Lord. I didn't write this. you know. But it was because, and these people in the truth, and sisters, and some of the sisters that were part of this group, they were influenced by Western culture. So we don't really realize how much Western culture influences us. And so when we look at the Bible, we see things that are contrary to Western culture, and then we get upset and say that the Bible is wrong. Well, perhaps it's your degenerate culture. You know, we act like we came up with the culture we in right now. We didn't come up with monogamy. White folks gave us that. We didn't come up with this form of Christianity that we have. White folks gave us that in slavery. We can't even think in our original language. So this is something that needs to be talked about, because we really need to get back to what we are supposed to do. And when that's what's in the word. And when you see other groups, they have other books and they have their own culture based upon what their spiritual or religious laws are. We should be doing the same thing. And we should view the marriage the same way. We should view it as the way that it is in the biblical text. Okay, and that should take precedent over what anybody else is saying or whatever else this Western culture is doing. It is Western culture, for example, to lay with a bunch of people and then have some children out of wedlock and then get married. Have somebody get on one knee and give you a ring, and then you take care of that kid. That's not that about. Even the ones they talk about dowry got a problem with it. You should understand who dowry was for. Let's look at that. This is Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. This is Deuteronomy 22nd chapter, the 22nd chapter in verse 13. It said, if any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her, and give occasions of speech against her, and bring up an evil name upon her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. So he's saying, hey, I took this woman to be my wife, and when that time came to consummate marriage, he found she was not a virgin. All right. So now let's see what this is, because only 5% of women in America today are virgins at the time of their birth. I mean, time of their wedding, time they get married. So, but what we see here is the expectation is that you would be a virgin. Okay, so let's keep reading. It said, then the father of the damsel and her mother, then shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. So now this is the bed sheet that was laid on the bed during the time of consummation, and when the blood would flow, that was kept. Okay, I've shown different lessons on marriage, and you should have cultures in the eastern part of the world. I've shown ceremoniously where they actually come out of the bride's bedroom chamber, marriage chamber, and they have that sheet, and there's a celebration. I've shown that of those videos. So now it says, and the damsel's father shall say unto, I'm in verse 16 now. I just read 15, I'm in verse 16. And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hated her. And lo, he had given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. You know that this is proof that she was a virgin. Then it says, and they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city, and the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him. Why? Because you have spoken this lie against this woman who was a virgin. Then when you married her. And then it said, so they chastised him, and it said, and they shall immerse him in 100 shekels of silver. So they taxed him. And then it said, and give them unto the father of the damsel. He had to give that money unto the woman's father, because he had brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel. So he was honorable to be a virgin. It wasn't something you just throw away like you throw away trash, because that's how virginity is being thrown away today in society. It's like some disease you want to get away from or get rid of. Nevertheless, it said, because he hath brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife, he may not put her away all his days. But if this thing be true, and the tokens of virginity be not found for the damsel, then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones, that she die, because she had wrought folly in Israel to play the whore in her father's house. So shalt thou put away evil from among you. So now understand what is being said here. Now, number one, this woman says she played the whore. Well, she's having sex with men that are not her husband, and he is calling this is common whoredom. So now we should understand the expectation is to be a virgin. You think they paying dowries for whores? Do you think that's what they were doing? You might have some cultures out in the East that have a particular tradition where it's just a traditional thing, and they still demand a bride price because of what they've been doing, but they were supposed to be virgins as well. And there are cases in widows and so forth, or in divorces, where those women would be another man's wife. But dowries, you don't see in the Bible dowries paid for women that are not virgins. You don't actually see that. So now let's keep reading Deuteronomy 22, because notice what it says here. If a man took a woman and lay with a woman that was not, she was a virgin rather. Let's see what this says about that. It said, if a man be found lying with a woman married to an husband. Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna skip down a little bit. Let's go to verse 23. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed into a, I don't want to read that one. Hold on. I'm in verse 28. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, meaning she's not what we would call in the Western world engaged. Okay. Because if we keep reading this, we read it, because I'm just going beyond what I'm talking about. But if we read the other passages, if you were betrothed or if you were married as a woman and a man lay with you, both of y'all would be killed. Okay, that's why you read about Joseph and Miriam. He put her away privately, right? Because if that had came out, she would have been stoned. He thought she was committing. It's under the umbrella seen as adultery. That's that man's Isha or wife. So it said, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver. Okay. And she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put away all his days. So he had to pay. Okay. He had to pay her, her father, and that was the dowry. Okay, that's what he had to pay. And the reason he had to pay the dowry was because she was a virgin. See, you don't see this. See, this will sometimes, like I'm saying, we'll read something and then you'll look at the Western world and then you'll try to apply it. You got a woman she done laid with 25 men. And then I've seen people try to apply this. Well, hey, you got to make this woman, he lay with her. He the 26th man, that had to be his wife. That's not what this says. That don't even apply. It doesn't even apply. It said a virgin. That woman ain't been a virgin in a minute. So now I'm just pointing that out because sometimes people are getting, and particularly in these instances, sisters were getting upset over something that, quite frankly, a lot of times don't even apply to you. It don't even. I was kind of taken aback because what you mad at what the Bible says? That's just what it is. But now I want to read this here so we understand what the point of the dowry was. Now this is Holman's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. I'm gonna pick it up at under dowry on page 440. It says, dowry, marriage present that ensured the new wife's financial security against the possibility her husband might forsake her or might die. The husband to be or his father paid the dowry or bride price to the bride's father to be kept for the bride. Okay, so now this was something that was for her financial security. It was for her financial security. And And if you keep reading on, it could be for a compensate and part of a compensation for losing a daughter, because a daughter can be a benefit, is usually a benefit to her father. I'm gonna read that. It said, besides guaranteeing future financial security, the dowry also compensated the bride and her family for the economic loss represented to her family by her leaving to join her husband's family. Just to give you an example of that, when you think of Rebecca and when she met Abraham's servant, right? And she watered all those camels. What does that show you? That show you she was doing work already. And who was she doing it for? For the benefit of her family. So that in the agricultural societies, the pastoral societies, that's not uncommon that's everybody's pulling weight. So when she leaves, that could take away. So it's compensation, but it's for security. Now, I want to pick this up in Genesis, the 31st chapter, Genesis 31. Because you see that here, that it was supposed to be used in a particular way, and it's not, it wasn't in the case of Leah and Rachel. Now, Leah and Rachel were both married to Jacob. Jacob, how did he pay his dowry? That's another thing. And then it wasn't always money. He paid a dowry through labor. What labor? He paid a dowry when he worked for 7 years for Rachel, then 7 years for Leah, and then he worked an additional 7. He worked over 20 years, approximately, for his wives. But now let's pick it up at verse 14. And he didn't have money. He went out. He just left his parents' home because Esau was gonna kill him. But nevertheless, it said, and Rachel and matter of fact, let me read up a little bit. I'm gonna pick it up at verse 11. This is Genesis 31 and verse 11. It says, and the angel of God spake unto me in a dream. Now this is Jacob telling his wives, saying, Jacob. And I said, here am I. And he said, lift up now thine eyes and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle, and ring straight, speckled and gristled, for I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. Laban kept, he wanted him around. He was a benefit unto him. He was benefiting off of his presence. So at a certain point, though, you have to leave. So he didn't want him to leave. But then it said in verse 13, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest the vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. So he's telling them to go to the land of your kindred. Then he said, so he's telling his wives what the Lord showed him. And then it says, and Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? What is that talking about? That's talking about the we'll keep reading. It says, are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us and hath quite devoured also our money. Okay, so what he did in that case is like they counted it as like, hey, he sold them and then took the money. So they don't even have the money for security. You see what I'm saying? So that was in that case. But normally that's what that would be for, in case something happened to the man. That's what it's for. Now in the Western world, we oftentimes use insurance to ensure that somebody has something. They didn't have an insurance company back then. That was the insurance. You understand? There could also be gifts that were given in addition to, let's go to Genesis, the 24th chapter, that were given in addition to the dowry. This is Genesis 24 and verse 53. It says, now this isn't the case of Rebecca. And I want to read this too, just on a side note, because the woman, you see precedent for things in the Bible. And what the woman had a choice. let's read that here. This is Genesis 24 and verse 50. Now they're talking to Rebecca, and then it says then Laban and Bethuel Bethuel answered and said, the thing proceeded from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee good or bad. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go and let her be thy master's sons. And it came to pass that when Abraham, hold on one second. I'll read into it. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. So those were gifts in addition to dowry. But then he says something else. It says in verse, because he wanted to go, and it said, and they called Rebekah, I'm in verse 58, and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate thee. Now I'm gonna skip down a little further, because he's bringing the bride back to his master, and then they see Isaac far off. It says in verse 64, and Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, because he had went out to meditate, she lifted up. She lifted off the camel. She lighted off the camel, and for she had said unto the servant, what man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant had said, it is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself, and the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into her mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and they both went in. Before they went to the tent, they went down to the courthouse and got a marriage license. It don't say any of that. It doesn't say any of that. It didn't say she walked down the aisle and here comes the bride, and as they were storing rice. It didn't say that. It didn't say he was down at the end of the altar of the church, boo-hooing with a tux on, and she come with an all-white gown. It didn't say any of that. It said, and Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So now, a couple of things. Number one, she agreed to go. Number two, there was no marriage license. Number three, we also saw the additional gifts could be given in addition to a dowry. Okay. So now dowry could be money. It could be, in the case of Jacob, Isaac's son, it was labor when he paid for the dowry for his wives. And then, or you see, it could be in, like, let's read. It could be something else. This is 1 Samuel. I mean, these are obviously cases these are 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verse 23, 18 and 23. It says, and Saul's servants spake those words. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go up a little bit further. So now then we read in verse 27, because it said, wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men, and David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in a full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him a call, his daughter to wife. Okay. So, because that's what he asked for 100, he gave him 200. This is in verse 25. It said, and Saul said, thus shall ye say to David, the king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemy. So that was in place of some kind of monetary dowry. And quite frankly, David wasn't in a social position at the time. He was a shepherd, basically, to be, he was a totally different social class, actually. That's why I was about to read earlier. When he's talking about who am I, because they were definitely in two different social classes. One is the king and one is not, but one is anointed to be king and would end up being the greatest king of Israel. But he replaced the dowry for this because he understood David was coming up, and he feared David, and he tried to give him a call so she would be a snare unto him. But that's another thing. So that's just something on the dowry. We should understand that what the Lord has set up There's absolutely nothing wrong with what the Lord has set up. As a matter of fact, when you look at what he did for his own bride, the Lord paid a type of dowry. This is Ezekiel the 16th chapter. So now this is the Lord talking about how he went into covenant with his bride. He says in verse 3, and say, thus saith the Lord. He's talking to Jerusalem. He said, thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite and thy mother an Hittite. He's just talking about who was in the land before. Okay, that's not literal. Then he's talking about how he passed over her. He saw the polluted in her own blood. Right. And then he looked in verse 8, he said, now when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, thy time was the time of love. And I spread my skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness. Yea, I swear unto thee and entered into a covenant with thee, saith the Lord God, and thou becamest mine. Then washed I thee with water. Yea, I thoroughly washed away thy blood from thee, and I anointed thee with oil. But then he says something else. In verse 11. He says, I decked thee also with ornaments, and I put bracelets upon thy hands and a chain upon thy neck. What is that talking about? That's talking about when you read in Genesis, the 24th chapter, that's the same thing that was given then at that time, right? But what this is talking about is they spoiled the Egyptians. That was the dowry. You understand? So, and so with that, brothers and sisters, almost like a bride price / dowry. That's what that was. And so I just wanted to point that out because it's nothing to be offended by. It's something that really is security for the woman. It's a number of reasons. Security for the woman. It also could be compensation for a family, but it also shows that the man is about something. I mean, a woman getting offended that a man would want to pay a dowry, quite frankly, shows a lack of understanding. So with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel. As well, we have our Stafford, Virginia congregation that meets at the Rare Roof Inn at 153 Garrisonville Road in Stafford, Virginia at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you were edified.